Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of We Watch Shudder. My name is Michelle, and who's here with me?
It's JD. Michelle, your voice is alive.
My voice is alive, and it is JD. It is always JD.
It is.
This is Michelle. If this is your first time tuning in, I don't smoke cigarettes. This is not my normal voice. This is, my voice was completely gone for the first 5 hours of the day because of an event we went to. What event did we go to, JD?
Oh, we went to see more Time Bomb Pro Wrestling at the Sanctuary Event Center in Fargo, North Dakota last night. Big event with the No Ropes Barbed Wire main event with Badger Briggs and Damon Spriggle. Christopher Daniels, the Fallen Angel, 30-year veteran legend, made an appearance and put on a hell of a match. Look, guys, we've been going to Time Bomb for a while now. You hear us talk about it. You know we love it. It was a great time, as always. Always pumped to go to see Time Bomb Pro Wrestling. As I understand it, they're going to be coming back again in May
11th.
May 11th is what I was told. And I'm sure it'll be another great show. I'm sure we'll be on hand. But, Michelle has very quickly become a Time Bomb Pro Wrestling super fan, and
I'm in love with Badger Briggs.
She was having a heck of a time last night.
Oh, yeah.
We all had a good time, but I'm honestly surprised you're able to record this show today.
Yeah, I woke up and I was like, I feel like death, and I can't even complain about it because all I can do is barely whisper. So over the course of the day, I was like, I know I have an episode to record later. I'm going to try to relax it, and now we're at least like audible, but it was really, really bad this morning. If I was getting murdered, nobody would have heard it. It was a perfect opportunity. So apparently May 12th, if anybody wants to kill me, that's your chance, because I will not be able to yell. I will be able to squeak out like a bah, and that's it. So mark your calendars. May 11th, wrestling. May 12th, the end of my life.
Oh man, that's not good. Super cool to run into several people at the show last night who are familiar with the podcast, have listened to at least a few episodes, know who we are. Met a lot of cool people. What was that young fella's name? Was his name Nick?
I believe it was Nick. Yes, I know Nick, the one you're talking about, who also loves Psycho Gorman.
He loves Psycho Gorman, and he's a huge Shudder nerd like the rest of us. Just everybody. It was super cool to bump into people and to hear people starting to recognize what we do. And speaking of what we do, Michelle, we're here to do what we do. That's why we do it, isn't that right?
We are. I do have one comment to make about last night, and that is that I felt very awkward, and I've been thinking about every social interaction that I had with somebody who came up to talk about the podcast, and I will be regretting every single one of them for the rest of my life. You weren't there, but my favorite interaction was that a woman came up to the table and looked at our stickers, which are free. So if you see our table, come get a sticker. Come talk to us. They're pretty cool. But a woman came up to grab a sticker, and I was like, oh, feel free to take a card too. It's got our podcast info. And she just looked at me with like a deer in headlights, and I looked back and I said, or not. And then she was like, no, I mean, I can take one. I was like, but you don't have to. And she's like, no, I can. And grabbed it and like scurried off. I was like, oh my God, that woman she's throwing that away. That was so awkward. I was like,
just wanted a sticker, Michelle.
I know. But I figure if she like was grabbing a sticker to like represent our podcast, I was like, feel free to take a business card. And I'm going to be regretting it for the rest of my life.
I unfortunately had to leave. The event ran later than expected because of some weather issues. And I had some time-sensitive things that needed to be dealt with immediately upon the show being finished. Michelle knows why that's funny, and we're just going to leave it at that.
Yep.
But I promise I will not abandon you in the line of duty again. I will be there to be just as awkward as you are and make things extra weird for both of us so that you don't have to be alone in the weirdness.
Yeah, the worst part was I went to Duffy's afterwards, which was really cool, but I kept running into all these people I had awkward interactions with, and they would like come up and talk to me. So I was like, this is good that they are talking to me again, and I didn't like make such a terrible impression. But I was just like, hello.
Michelle, it's never the worst part of your night when you go to Duffy's.
That's true. I do always forget the direction that you are supposed to order or to open the doors in,
Left,
and then
right.
I look like a fucking noob. I know.
Left, right, every time, Michelle. Left, right, cash only. That's everything you need to know about Duffy's. Left, right, cash. They actually have
awful.
There's at least one bartender there who has a T-shirt that says "Left, right, cash only."
Oh,
it's
that's
a Duffy's
beautiful.
T-shirt. You gotta know.
Yeah.
Anyway, shout out Duffy's Tavern in Fargo, the home of the always awesome after parties after Time Bomb Pro Wrestling.
Anyway,
we do talk about horror movies and Shudder movies and things like that occasionally. We don't always get obsessed about professional wrestling, but look, let's be honest, it's becoming more and more common. We are here to talk about a new Shudder original release, just hit today. Being Friday the 17th of March, which, oh, by the way, we almost forgot this part too, Michelle. What does that mean today is?
It is our 1 year anniversary of beginning the podcast. And episode 96.
96 episodes in
365 days.
Man, it sure doesn't feel like we've done 96 episodes, and it sure doesn't feel like it's been a year.
Well, a third of those were released in the span of 1 month. So
right. Yeah, we did. You remember how we did an episode every day in October, but we made sure to remind you every single time that we did not, in fact, record them all in October. We spent the whole 6 months prior recording extra episodes to prepare for. Yeah, that's a thing we did.
I do remember.
We recorded a lot of episodes. Anyway, I'm glad you guys, if you've been with us since the jump, you're the best. If you've picked us up along the way and stuck with us, you are also the best. If you are listening for the very first time today, you are also the best. And I hope you stick with us. We watch Shudder on the show. That's why we called it We Watch Shudder. Shudder is a streaming service for horror and horror-adjacent films. Today we're talking about an original release called what, Michelle?
Leave.
All right, fine, I'll go.
Make like a tree and get the fuck out of here. Leave.
Yes, the movie is called Leave, Leave, not to be confused with Get Out or any of those other things we just talked about.
The singular form of leaves. Leave. There's one leaf on the. It fell from the tree.
It's not a singular leaves.
What? The English language is confusing.
It's so dumb.
Yeah.
So sometimes we will give you the description of the film as presented on the Shudder website. Sometimes we don't do that because it was brought to our attention that they are often quite spoilery.
Oh, yeah.
Are we going to do that today, Michelle?
We are going to do that because while this seems like a kind of long description, it all happens in the first 5 minutes, and it is all a setup.
Yeah, this is all setup information. So we're gonna and we'll also add some context as to extra reasons why we're reading this description for you this week. But Michelle, do you want to read that official write-up from the Shudder website?
Hell yeah! Leave? I got my voice back. May as well use it.
Yeah.
Okay. As an infant, Hunter White was discovered abandoned in a New England cemetery. She was wrapped in a piece of cloth covered in satanic symbols, and around her neck hung a wolf's cross pendant. 20 years later, she is obsessed with finding out why she was abandoned and who her biological parents are. A Shudder original. JD, would you like to hit us with your spoiler-free thoughts?
Yeah, I could do that.
Sweet.
We this is very similar in certain ways to the experience we had with our archive title episode last week for Dear Sister. This when we say horror and horror adjacent, this movie I feel is it's horror adjacent, but it's the least horror adjacent you could be and still be considered horror adjacent. Does that make sense?
Sure.
There are a few supernatural elements here, and there's a little bit of spookiness going on. But overall, I felt this was actually a very sort of straightforward kind of family drama in a lot of ways. It's definitely a mystery. There are some thrilling elements. As I am very fond of saying about a lot of movies, it's way too slow to be this long. If it's gonna go at this pace, it could have been 20 minutes shorter, and I feel have been just as effective. There are some interesting things that they set up and then nothing ever happens with that we'll talk more about in the spoiler section. I thought it was a well-made film, well put together. I can't fault the director, but this script just didn't really do it for me. I wasn't caught up in the story at any point. I wasn't really wrapped up and sort of having that lack of awareness of the rest of the world around me kind of vibe. It's just real average for me on this one. I'm gonna go with 2 skulls.
2 skulls from JD. In order to tell you what I think of this movie, I'm going to tell you a small story. I was not familiar with anybody involved in the making of this film, but the lead girl, Alicia von Rittberg, looked familiar, and I realized later that she looked like the girl from The Adventures of Alex Mack, which she's not because she's way too young and was probably not even alive when that movie or that TV show was airing. However, the director of this movie, Alex Herron, apparently made many music videos, and his background is mostly in music videos, which is why a lot of this movie is just very beautiful to look at, and you can tell that it was made by somebody who makes music videos. And in his catalog includes Tayo Cruz and Bass Hunter and Tiny Tempa and all these artists that I used to really like. So I was like, hey, Tayo Cruz, he has one where it's featuring Ludacris that I really liked, and it's called Break Your Heart. I'm gonna go revisit that song and watch the music video on YouTube so that I can see if it was anything like this movie that I just watched. So I went to watch Break Your Heart by Tayo Cruz, featuring Ludacris, and directed by Alex Herron, the same director of Leave, the movie that we watched today on We Watch Shudder. We watched Shudder, and that movie was Leave. And I went to watch Break Your Heart, and my heart was broken because I realized it said that music video came out 12 years ago. And the music I do not like as much as I used to. I used to really like that song. And then I went to the comments and somebody said, wow, the 2010s was a really great time for music. And that made me very sad. And between that comment, seeing that Break Your Heart came out 12 years ago, and watching this movie, I had a bad evening. 1.5 skulls out of 5.
Oh my God. That was I was not expecting story time with Michelle on this particular
There was no
episode.
way I could. I didn't want to be a dick and actually criticize the movie right up front, so I was like, this is how I will get across that I'm not giving this a good score, but hopefully people are like, haha, you're old, you know? I'm trying to make it gentle, but I did not enjoy it. Okay.
Well, that's fair. So 2 skulls from me, 1.5 skulls from Michelle. That's 1.75 skulls. I can do that math pretty well.
Awesome.
That's our experience, and as always, guys. I hope it goes without saying, but I fear it doesn't. So I always like to remind you. Keep in mind, this is just like we're not. It's just our experience with the movie, right? You may love this movie, you may not. We're just here to tell you about our reactions to it and how we felt about it.
I have a lot of praise for this movie that we'll get into in the spoiler section. That's why I didn't want to be a dick about it.
If you ever feel like we're being awful and rude to a movie, please tell us. Let us know, because I'm trying very desperately not to do that. Unless you're the Scary of 61st,
I was about to say,
fuck that movie.
Or The Room. You hated The Room.
I did not like that movie.
No, you did
not. I will also like to point out, though, that The Room was one of our very, very early episodes, and I have tried very hard to not get that upset about movies. I mean, anyway. So yeah, that's what we thought about the movie. It currently has a 4-skull aggregate rating on Shudder, so clearly there are people who are really into this film as well. But if you'd like to hear our in-detail spoilery thoughts, we're going to be talking about those here in just a moment. But if you'd like to see the movie for yourself before we spoil a bunch of things, we're going to give you an opportunity to push your way. And make sure you come back. It's been a while since we took a moment to remind you that you definitely want to come back and push the play button and finish listening to the podcast after you watch the movie. Is that right, Michelle?
That is correct.
Yeah. But if they want to go watch the movie, when should they hit that pause button?
Right now. Okay.
Okay, did you push the play button again? I hope so.
I did.
Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. We're going to find out. So leave.
Yes. Okay, bye.
That's the name of the movie.
The entire episode.
It's not an imperative. Tell us, Michelle. I'm fascinated by story time that you just told us.
Yeah.
About how an experience with bad negative nostalgia combined with this movie to ruin your day, apparently. I did not have quite that response to it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how... Let's go a little... Well, no, so we usually try to explain how the movie goes, right? And normally Michelle is the one... I almost forgot we were going to do this.
That's okay.
Normally Michelle is the one who kind of tries to summarize the plot of the movie for those of you who don't watch the movies and you just want to listen to us be dumb. I'm going to try to, and this is part of why also we were keen on reading the description of the movie, is because Michelle wasn't certain she could adequately summarize this movie. So true. I'm going to try.
Okay.
And I think you'll understand why. So we open, the movie opens with a 911 call, and somebody's telling the 911 operator that somebody left a baby in the cemetery. And then the cops show up and they find this baby, and it's 2002. And then one of the cops who finds the baby ends up adopting the baby. And then we flash forward 20-odd years, and now the baby is all grown up, getting ready to go to college. I don't understand why she would just be going to college 20 years later. We would think it'd be more like 18 years later, but that's a whole other story.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe so. So she's getting ready to go off to college, and she's digging through some boxes in her house, and then she tells her dad that her dad is clearly under the impression that she's road tripping to Georgetown, but then she goes to the airport and she flies to Norway because she at some point learned that this real story behind how she was found. She knew she was adopted, but she just didn't know the whole story, and she got it all. And then she did a DNA test and found out she was 99% Scandinavian, which how you narrow that down to Norway, I don't know. So she goes to Norway to try and find her parents or who her parents were, and she thinks it's the singer from this band that was touring the area when she was found. And then it turns out the singer of the band can't have babies, but the bass player from the band and his girlfriend had a baby. But the bass player apparently was accused of murdering the mom because the mom told the bass player that she killed the baby because she had some mental problems. And now, so the dad is in a mental hospital / prison type environment. The mom is deceased, apparently burned to death in a church by the father. And then, so she goes off and she meets some of her relatives of her dead mom. And they turn out to be kind of weird, and they're not as off-put by the fact that the 20-year-old daughter of their dead relative just showed up out of nowhere. And then things get weird. She starts asking too many questions. They're like, we don't want to answer these. Guys, you understand how complicated... I'm only about halfway through the movie at this point. It's so convoluted. And then eventually it turns out that they make it like maybe there's something to do with this satanic Norwegian black metal band, and maybe there's some sort of demon thing going on here. But then it turns out, actually, these are just like hyper-religious Christian fanatics who like to torture demons out of people. And her dad didn't kill her mom. In fact, her mom's not even dead. She's locked up in a weird room in the basement of the house. And then dad escapes the mental hospital somehow. They never tell us how. And dad dies trying to save mom and the baby. And then... it's so convoluted, Michelle. I'm sure people are just like, this is the most boring 3 minutes of plot summary ever, and now you understand why I wasn't caught up in the movie.
And it was that for an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah, it was. It's just like, again, like I said, all of my problems really with the movie are story based. Right? It's a beautiful movie. It's really well shot. Everybody performed really solid here. But this story just proceeds at a very leisurely, lingering pace. There's not a lot of urgency to any of this. So few of the reactions and the interactions of these people feel natural and real. It seems like they're setting up, like I said, something to do with how it's going to be related to this evil satanic band that her mom was involved with, and then that just goes nowhere. There are some interesting hints of awareness of different events and things in Norwegian black metal history and subculture that I was kind of impressed by. But overall, it just... things that I thought it was going to do, it didn't do, and what it didn't do super effectively, and I feel like my review of the movie at this point is as unsatisfying as the movie was for me.
I have mentioned several times on this podcast where I liked certain parts of the movie, but I didn't like the movie as a whole. Certain anthologies have really gotten that criticism from me. This one, it's odd because I don't know if I've really experienced this before, where I liked the individual parts of the movie. I didn't like the way that they came together as a movie, and I'm not talking about entire scenes like I usually would be. I enjoyed the musical score. I thought it overpowered significant chunks of this movie, especially the very beginning. Like, the opening credits are overwhelming. I liked the imagery, and it makes sense that this was made by somebody with a music video background. That's why I was curious, what else has this person done? It's very pretty to look at, but then it's very disjointed when you see that kind of like the flashback sequences. They don't make sense as a whole. One thing that really, I think that they kind of messed up by doing this movie in English. I think that if this had been in Norwegian, it would have been better. The lead actress was very good, but her American accent was not great at times, and it took me out because it was very much like, kept reminding me like, yes, this was filmed not in America. Like, why did they feel compelled to use English? And one of the things that really was just odd and added to it was my best friend needs subtitles, so I'm used to watching movies with subtitles, and I had them on for this, and they were so inconsistent. The characters would speak Norwegian, and sometimes the subtitles would tell you what they were saying. The closed captioning subtitles would tell you what they were saying in Norwegian, even though the main character didn't know, and it would give away parts of the movie in that way. But then later on, they would be speaking in Norwegian, and there would be no text telling me anything that was going on. And then at other times, there would be the usual text translating translating the Norwegian to English, but also the closed captioning telling me what they're saying in Norwegian. And I think that like weird disjointed inconsistency really represented how I felt about the rest of the movie. It was such a weird experience.
Let it be known to film directors everywhere. Your subtitles are now officially part of how your movie is being evaluated. Make sure them shits is accurate.
When they give away plot points in the subtitles, it's so weird. Another movie that did a weird thing completely unrelated to this one was West Side Story. I watched that with subtitles. It was on HBO, and half that movie is in Spanish, and there is neither a closed caption or a subtitle translating it, so you miss huge chunks of the movie because I watched it on HBO. Half the movie is in Spanish, and the subtitle just said speaking Spanish, and it was entire scenes of conversation that I did not understand, and nobody translated it for me, and it was very strange. And this was the second time I've had an experience like that of just the subtitles actually making a difference. It was
welcome to another surprise episode of Michelle Watches Musicals. If you enjoyed the discussion of the Butthole Cats cut a couple of weeks ago, you're probably going to be into this.
I drank a lot of Duffy's yesterday, and I did go off about Cats a little bit because somebody tried to defend it, and that was not happening.
I do also. I mean, I kid a little bit about your holding the film responsible for its subtitles, but I do think it is emblematic of the fact that the movie was non-engrossing enough that sort of thing could be end up being a real sore thumb in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
But it just things just happen in this movie without a lot of setup. Like I said at one point, like the whole thing about the mom maybe still being alive and hidden in some room in this house just comes out of nowhere. And then all of a sudden dad is just there. Like, how did he get out of the mental hospital? Like, there's no scene where he breaks out or escapes or cons some people into, like, he just suddenly he's there after spending the last 18 years or whatever in this this facility, and then just all of a sudden, like they set up all the she's left in the cemetery in this weird blanket covered in satanic symbols, and there's this weird inverted cross maybe necklace that actually turns out to be a wolf's cross. And if you know anything about Norse symbolism, wolf's cross is actually more related to a Thor's hammer than an inverted crucifix, but it gets a lot of play either way. Welcome
to another episode of JD Knows a Lot About Religion and Michelle Likes Musicals.
It's just there's a lot of stuff here that I don't know that I would have liked it anymore if it had pursued, but I thought for sure they were setting up some sort of like demonic possession thing or something relating to that band. And I do feel like I said, there's a certain amount of awareness of Norwegian black metal history and culture in this movie. A couple of things stand out to me very loudly as there's no fucking way that's a coincidence. The first one, the guy in prison, his name is Christian. There is a very well-known person in Norwegian black metal history. He calls himself, and I don't know if it was ever legally changed, or maybe it was, his name is Varg, I believe it's pronounced Vikernes, also known as Count Grishnak of a band called Birdsum. Varg is famous because he murdered this other guy called Euronymous from a band called Mayhem over a contractual dispute, stabbed him in the head with the big knife, and then spent the next 20 years or so in prison. But people used to really like Varg means wolf, right? That's the Norwegian word for wolf, and that's what he made his name. But his real name, his birth name, is Christian. And so there was a part of that to me that was just like, all right, that's a little detail. It's very interesting. The application of the use of the wolf's cross specifically because of that dual sort of connotation, as like if you know what's really going on, you know its relation to the more historical Norse mythology, but also that crossover into more satanic elements, which was definitely something that black metal was big on. Even just the simple church burning element involved here, that was a very big thing in the early 90s. And the other thing, I haven't gone back to check on it, but I'm so certain there is a brief cameo in the scene where Hunter goes to the bar to first try to meet or encounter Cecilia, the singer, who she thinks is her mother. There's a guy, after Cecilia gets off the stage, she goes to sit over at her booth or whatever, and there's a guy who walks up to her just briefly. He never speaks in a way that you can hear on camera. You just see it in the distance. He walks up to her, says something to her, like, I don't know, and then he turns around and walks towards the camera and out of the scene, and I am 100% certain that is a guy who used to be in a somewhat well-known Norwegian black metal band called Gorgoroth, who performed under the stage name of Gaal, G-A-A-H-L, if you don't know anything about Norwegian black metal.
You are 100%
sure
correct.
His name is also Christian. But,
yeah, the reviews for this one, actually, a lot of the people who liked it were talking about the black metal connections and talking about him making a cameo and some of the things that you were talking about, the symbolism and the connections.
So you've confirmed this. Okay.
Yes,
yeah,
it is 100% confirmed. Yep.
I was like, that's and then for a minute I was like, oh, it's because I don't know if you know anything about Gaal,
no.
but he is frankly kind of a terrible person. I will let you spend some time reading his Wikipedia page and some of the controversies involving that guy. There was a whole thing about maybe some kidnapping or something at one point, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. So anyway, there are layers of what?
I said sometimes you just get a little into kidnapping. You can't help it.
Right.
You've never accidentally gotten into kidnapping?
No, never once in my life. But
okay, never mind.
No, so I appreciated that because I mean I am kind of a long time Norwegian black metal fan, and there are a lot of movies that try to incorporate elements of that just have no understanding of what they're talking about at all. And so I at least appreciated that there was some authenticity to this and its awareness of what was going on. There's also a very interesting element. It's such a subtle thing also in the fact that Cecilia, the singer, she was in this black metal band that was touring the States around 2002, and then now 20 years later, she's gone sort of clearly in more of a traditional rock oriented thing, and she's more of a popular sort of singer, and not in the sense of like a huge celebrity, but just more straightforward rock and roll music, and that's a thing that you see. Like there have been certain notable moments where guys in black metal bands had sort of turned and evolved into these less extreme sorts of things, and that almost feels like a reference to that sort of. It felt very authentic in that way, and I appreciated that. But then they don't do. I was kind of curious if they were going to incorporate any of those elements, and it more becomes sort of a similar to a lot of certain black metal attitudes, which is this idea that you think that these are the bad guys when really there are these grotesque, horrifying Christian religious sub-elements running through the culture that are just hidden and kept under wraps and nobody talks about, which was very much a part of the original sort of black metal rebellious nature, was a rejection of these heavy oppressive Christian presences in those places. But the story itself, the details, I was never invested in the characters. I was never given an opportunity to feel like if there was supposed to be suspense here, I don't know how, because so many things just happen without any buildup of any kind, and then it just ends, right? It's just like, oh, she's in the hospital with her mom, and then her adopted dad shows up, and it's just over.
It is super abrupt.
It really could have used a rewrite on the script heavily, but other than that, I got no gripes with the movie. This story didn't work for me.
This is one of those movies that makes me want to have a fundamental change to our podcast and how I very much overanalyze our scoring, or specifically my scoring. And part of it is that I want to be honest, but I also don't want to be a dick when I don't like things. So sometimes I will, talk about Tayo Cruz instead and how I feel old instead of talking about the movie itself. And I think a new approach may be inspired by a review I saw of this movie. And this was on the Shudder website. A user named Pazuzu44 said just this in their review. So far, everyone keeps saying slow burn, which means it sucks, but they don't want to say that. And then they gave it 5 skulls. And I feel like that is a much better way for me to approach this, would be, I really did not enjoy it. Let me tell you all my reasons why. Here's where I found things were disjointed. And then I give those 5 skulls, like the ones that are terrible for me. I gave them a really high score because I feel like Pazuzu44, if I was a maker of this movie and I saw their review, I wouldn't even be sad about the criticism because they gave me 5 skulls. If somebody gave us a 5-star rating on like Apple Podcast, they could say that I am the ugliest person they've seen in their whole life and they wish that I would die. But if they gave me 5 stars, that's fine by me. So inspired by Pazuzu44, I may approach this differently in the future.
Side note, by the way, I did find a little bit of information about the incident involving Gaul, formerly of Gorgoroth. The incident happened in February 2002 during a late-night party at Gaul's house in Espedal when he became involved in a confrontation with a man. Gaul was accused of severely beating the man, torturing him for long periods of time, and collecting his blood into a cup and threatening to make him drink it.
Okay, but that's metal as fuck, right?
Yeah.
The gall of that man.
It says, now, he claims that he was the one who was attacked, and he was just defending himself. In fact, his literal quote here was, "I was the one who was attacked, but they think I punished him too hard. As I always say, when people cross my line and I let them know where the line is many steps before they cross it and they still choose to cross it, then I will be the one to decide what their punishment will be."
Okay, but I kind of love that.
If
anyway. Somebody fucks with me, I'm allowed to drink their blood. I like that philosophy.
No, he was going to force the man to drink his own blood.
Oh, see, that's where you messed up. I can drink your blood if you mess with me. If I make you drink your own blood, that's where it's fucked up.
Yeah.
Only I get to drink your blood if you wrong me.
So yeah, he anyway, that's the kind of, like, I spent most of my time with this movie just kind of analyzing the black metal sort of cultural elements there, more than being concerned with what was actually going on in the story. That's my experience with the movie. Again, it's It's well shot. It's super well produced. It's slick. It's a good looking movie. The performances are solid. I think the obvious answer, Michelle, to why they chose to do this movie in English is because the girl was abandoned in America.
But why did that have to be part of the story? I don't think it was necessary, and it just wound up distracting because she was a very good actress, but the accent, especially for somebody from Massachusetts, was
could
not
have just
correct.
Abandoned her in Trondheim or something. It didn't have to be all the way across the ocean.
It was not necessary. It was just another thing added to this movie that seemed tossed in.
If I am playing, I don't want to say devil's advocate, but if I am trying to at least look at what the goal there might have been, I think it might be maybe to illustrate that Anna wanted to get the child as far away from her family as possible, and therefore the child was abandoned in America and the English speaking person. But, I think there are definitely ways you could have worked around that. I honestly didn't have any trouble with her English at all. Not
the English, just the accent.
No, that's what I mean. The accent. I didn't really notice anything. It didn't bother me in any way. I didn't have any thoughts about it until you pointed it out, Michelle.
I'm sorry. I think part of it is because she is alongside fellow Norwegian, actors. So hearing them with their accent, it would really bring out her own when they were having a conversation, like where it would just start leaking out a little bit more. And I really caught it. Now, granted, I am the worst person when it comes to doing accents. So she did a much better job at doing an American accent than I could doing a Norwegian one, to the extent where I would not even do it because nobody would know where I am trying to do this accent, and I am sure it would be problematic. So I am awful at accents. It just very much distracted me when hers came out, and also I just love the Norwegian language, and I would have loved to hear more of it. It's a very beautiful language.
That's very fair. We haven't even talked about yet how Stein, the son of her great aunt or whatever that she meets at the Norheim estate, just that guy just turns violent and rapey out of nowhere for no reason at all.
Yeah, that was a lot.
Yeah, it was very sort of. It was especially considering the overall tone and direction of the rest of the movie that seemed super aggressive and out of place. I definitely understood the they were trying to make him out to be kind of a troublemaker, but that was a step that it almost felt like they needed her to be assaulted on that level as an excuse for her to fight back on the level that she did. They wanted to get to the goal of where all of a sudden she might be wanted for murder, and that's just how they reverse engineered it. Is kind of how that felt to me. But I tell you what, that moment where she fucking wallops him with that cast iron skillet and then his head hits that marble countertop was pretty fucking brutal.
Yeah. Again, have nothing else to add. You can tell when we reach the end of the episode, and I just go, yep.
Yep. Yeah, so not a whole lot to say about this one, in spite of the fact that we're now 43 minutes in. It does, I guess what I would say is I'm definitely interested in seeing where Alex Herron goes from here. I'm curious to see what other kind of stuff he's able to put together. But I don't remember the name of the person who wrote this film, but I hope they find some more stuff to do too. That was a very non-committal. And again, guys, like I said, there's tons of very positive reviews of the film on the Shudder website. Just because it didn't work for us doesn't mean it's not going to work for you. And there are definitely there are positive things about it. So it's if you're looking for something to watch, it might be very well worth your time. But
Yeah, this is one where it's not overwhelmingly bad. It's not something for both of us, but there are, like you said, a lot of people who, and a lot of the reviews talk about the black metal imagery and how they like all of that being connected. So I think people who understand that like you do are going to get a little bit more out of it for that reason.
There are definitely little nuances there that I appreciated. It just wasn't enough to hook me on the overall story. But
I did enjoy it. Five Skulls.
I hated this movie, Five Skulls.
Yeah, I might do that.
That is one other thing that I wanted to point out here. I thought the play on her name and the pronunciation of that name becoming the title of the... I was a little... I was almost a little, like, too hokey for me in certain ways, but...
that could have been why they wanted it to be in English, even though it didn't make a lot of sense. This is for that naming convention.
Yeah, this is something that we've bumped into before. Regardless of anything else I have to say about this movie, they needed a better title for sure. This title does not imply anything significant about this movie at all. In fact, the title is a pun. It's just a pun, a play on her original birth name. And it's like, oh man,
like puns,
that's it.
So I will give it 5 skulls. I will retroactively change my score.
Don't do that.
It could be the 5 skull category, but with an asterisk, where they're the ones that I did not enjoy.
I got to be honest with you, Michelle. Now, granted, I know we talked quite a bit about the Time Bomb Pro Wrestling up front, but I am continuously baffled by our ability to make these episodes last when it's a movie that we didn't necessarily get connected to a lot. But apparently I had to give a history lesson on black metal, and so that's how we got here.
I am very good at talking about nothing.
Do you have anything else? I mean, as long as we're here, we're already past the 46-minute mark. As long as we're here, do you have anything else you need to get off your chest about the subtitles in West Side Story? Or in anything else for that matter?
Don't even get me started on the subtitles of West Side Story. I was really into it, and it was the newer West Side Story, by the way. Obviously not the classic. It was the recreation, and I wanted to know so much more about the story, and I could not. They deliberately did not translate it, which didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Michelle,
yeah,
haven't you been Duolingo Spanishing?
This was before I had reached day 916 in Duolingo of Spanish, so I really did not understand anything.
Well, maybe what you need to do is go back and watch it again, and maybe your Duolingo will have solved your problem.
I will definitely understand bailar, which means dance.
Yes,
so
it means to
that'll
dance.
Be useful.
Yes.
And
the non-conjugated form of the verb, yes.
Musica means music.
Uh-huh.
These are all going to be very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how to say west or side or story, so I feel like there's still going to be a lot of stuff missing.
They'll probably tell you right up front.
I hope
how to say West Side Story. Do you know how you say West Side Story in Spanish?
El West Side Storia.
No, you say West Side Story in Spanish.
Oh, my God. Say goodnight, JD.
Good night, JD. Oh. With no summation.